Everyone, it's a privilege to be here with you today to talk about something that is both deeply personal and profoundly universal. How to hear God's voice clearly. You see, the idea of hearing God's voice is something that transcends religion or belief systems. It is about aligning ourselves with a deeper, more profound level of awareness. It is about tuning into a frequency where divine guidance, clarity, and wisdom can flow freely through us. But to hear that voice, we must first understand something fundamental. God's voice isn't external to us. It's not some loud, thunderous sound. It's not a message from far away. In fact, the voice of God is already inside you. It's embedded in your consciousness, waiting to be awakened. We live in a world where our attention is constantly being pulled in a million directions. Our minds are filled with noise, thoughts, worries, distractions. But if we want to hear that clear inner guidance, we must first create the space for it. We need to break the pattern of the noise, the chaos. We need to come into a place of stillness, of calm, where the divine can speak. Here's the first step, quieting the mind. In order to hear anything clearly, whether it's your own intuition or the divine, you must first eliminate the static. The mind, left unchecked, is like a radio tuned to multiple stations at once, each one vying for attention. But when we deliberately choose to silence that noise, we create a channel through which God can speak. This is where meditation, mindfulness, and breathwork come in. It's not about forcing your mind to stop. It's about gently guiding your awareness into a state of presence where the mind's constant chatter can settle. Now you might wonder, why is it so difficult to hear? Why does it feel as though we are distant from that divine connection? The answer is simple. We are conditioned by the world around us. We've been taught to look outward, to seek validation and guidance from external sources. But God's voice doesn't come from outside of us. It comes from a deeper part of ourselves. When we learn to shift our perception, to stop searching in the world and instead look inward, we begin to tune into the quiet whispers that have always been there. Imagine this for a moment. Your heart is a receiver. It's constantly picking up signals from the universe, from God, from your higher self. But like any receiver, it needs to be tuned to the right frequency. The more you practice presence, the more you align yourself with that inner voice. You begin to recognize that voice not just in moments of stillness, but in your everyday life, in the gentle nudges, in the synchronicities, in the feelings that seem to guide you in a certain direction. But let's take it one step further. If you want to hear God's voice clearly, you need to believe you can. So often we dismiss the voice because we don't trust it. We second guess it, dismiss it as our own thoughts or fears. But here's the truth. The voice of God is never distant, and it is never wrong. It's a voice of love, of truth, of knowing that transcends your current limitations. So how do you begin this practice? How do you begin to hear God's voice clearly? Start with presence. Take time each day to sit in stillness. Create a space where the mind can rest and your body can relax. Allow yourself to just be. No agenda, no expectations. Simply breathe and become aware of the stillness. Trust yourself. Trust that you have the capacity to hear. Trust that your intuition is divine. Trust that the guidance you feel is true, even if it doesn't make sense in the moment. Practice alignment. When your thoughts and emotions are in harmony with your true essence, your inner self aligns with the divine. You'll know it because your life will begin to feel effortless, peaceful, and full of grace. Embrace the unknown. When you step into the unknown with trust and confidence, you create the space for God's voice to emerge. It's not always about knowing what comes next. It's about trusting that you are guided, even when you can't yet see the full picture. Finally, understand that hearing God's voice is not a one-time event. It's a lifelong practice. It's about continually refining your connection with your higher self, letting go of doubt and opening yourself up to divine guidance in every moment. So I invite you to trust in your own inner wisdom. Know that you are already connected to that divine voice. It's not a question of whether or not it's there. It's a question of whether you are ready to listen. The more you practice, the more you tune in, the clearer it becomes. And when you hear God's voice clearly, you will realize it's always been with you. It's the voice of your own truth, guiding you toward your highest potential. To truly hear God's voice clearly, the first essential step is to quiet the mind. In our daily lives, we are bombarded with endless distractions, constant noise, information overload, and the ceaseless chatter of our thoughts. Our minds often race from one thought to another, rarely pausing for stillness. This constant mental activity creates a barrier between us and the deeper divine guidance that is always available. When the mind is cluttered and chaotic, it becomes nearly impossible to hear the subtle yet powerful whispers of the divine. By quieting the mind, we create a space where clarity can emerge. It's in this silence that we can begin to connect with our higher self and the divine voice that resides within us. This doesn't mean forcing our minds to stop thinking or trying to empty ourselves of all thoughts. Instead, it's about cultivating an awareness of the present moment, allowing thoughts to pass without becoming attached to them. We become observers of our thoughts rather than being swept away by them. Meditation, breathwork, and mindfulness practices are tools that help us achieve this stillness. Through focused breathing or simply observing our thoughts, we can create a mental environment conducive to divine connection. Over time, the more we practice quieting the mind, the more we begin to notice the subtle shifts in our awareness. These shifts signal that we are aligning with a higher frequency, one that allows us to hear God's voice more clearly.
The beauty of quieting the mind is that it's not a one-time event. It is a practice that requires patience and consistency.
With each moment of stillness, we move closer to the divine presence within, allowing its guidance to flow through us with increasing clarity. God's voice is already inside you, waiting to be awakened. Often we look outward for answers, seeking guidance from external sources, hoping for signs or messages from somewhere beyond ourselves. However, the truth is that the divine voice resides within each of us. It is not something we need to search for in the world. It is a part of our inner being woven into the fabric of who we are. The challenge lies not in finding this voice, but in becoming aware of it. We are conditioned to listen to the louder, more dominant voices in our minds, our worries, our doubts, our judgments, and we tend to dismiss the quieter, more subtle whispers of our true inner wisdom. These inner nudges often get drowned out by the noise of daily life. The divine voice, however, isn't forceful or loud. It is gentle, patient, and calm. It speaks through the language of intuition, emotion, and inner knowing. To access this voice, we must begin to shift our attention inward. We must start to recognize that the answers we seek are already embedded within us. Every thought, feeling, and experience we have carries within it a message. Our bodies, too, hold wisdom. And when we become attuned to the sensations and emotions that arise, we begin to hear the divine more clearly. It's not about searching for something distant or separate from ourselves. Instead, it's about remembering that the voice of God has always been there waiting for us to notice it. When we pause, trust, and allow ourselves to be present with our inner world, we begin to hear the wisdom that has always been speaking to us. Meditation, mindfulness, and breathwork are powerful practices that help calm the mind and create the space necessary for divine guidance to enter. These practices are not just about relaxation, but about consciously training the mind to become more aware and present. When we engage in these practices, we are actively choosing to step away from the chaos of everyday life and focus on the present moment. This shift in focus allows us to move past the distractions and noise that often prevent us from connecting with a deeper spiritual awareness. Meditation, for example, provides a direct way to quiet the mind. When we sit in stillness and focus on our breath or a mantra, we are training our minds to let go of unnecessary thoughts. It's an act of surrender, allowing thoughts to come and go without attachment, creating space between the mind's chatter and the deeper, quieter voice of our inner wisdom. Over time, the more we practice, the more familiar we become with the stillness. This stillness, when cultivated, becomes a channel for divine communication, as we can more clearly hear the subtle nudges of our higher self. Mindfulness extends this practice into daily life. It encourages us to be fully present in every moment, to notice the sensations of the body, the sounds around us, and the thoughts that arise without judgment. By becoming mindful of our experience, we begin to observe, rather than react, allowing us to tune into a higher level of awareness where God's voice can be heard. Breathwork plays a key role in these practices, as it directly influences our physical state. Conscious breathing helps regulate the nervous system, calming the body and mind, and creating a sense of equilibrium. This balance is essential for accessing the divine voice, as it aligns the body, mind, and spirit in harmony. Silencing the external noise is essential to hear the inner voice clearly. In our modern world, we are constantly surrounded by distractions, social media, news, and the relentless demands of daily life. These external sources of information often create a sense of urgency, pulling our attention away from the present moment and making it difficult to connect with anything deeper. The more we immerse ourselves in external noise, the harder it becomes to hear the subtle, quiet whispers of the divine. To hear God's voice, we must intentionally step away from this noise. This doesn't mean rejecting the world around us, but rather choosing where we place our focus. When we create moments of stillness, we allow ourselves to step out of the frenzy into a space of clarity. This can be done through practices like meditation, mindful walking, or simply sitting in silence. In those moments of quiet, we break the habit of constantly seeking information or stimulation from the outside world. Instead, we turn inward and become receptive to the guidance already within us. It is in the stillness that the mind begins to settle and the external noise fades into the background. When we aren't bombarded with information, we create room for the divine voice to emerge. The more we practice stepping away from external distractions, the more attuned we become to the subtle frequency of divine communication. Over time, this practice strengthens our ability to recognize the inner guidance that is always present, allowing us to hear it more clearly, no matter where we are. The key is to consciously choose to disconnect from the noise, creating space for something much more profound to emerge. The divine voice comes from within, not from external sources. For many of us, the tendency is to look outside ourselves for answers, for guidance, for validation. We may turn to other people, religious leaders, or even external signs in the world, believing that the answers we seek lie somewhere beyond our own minds and hearts. However, the truth is that God's voice is always present within us. It is a part of our essence, embedded deeply in our being. The difficulty arises when we do not trust that the answers we seek are already inside of us, or we fail to recognize the guidance that is being offered. Our own thoughts and feelings can sometimes drown out the divine voice, but the divine presence is there regardless. The voice of God is not one of force or imposition. It is gentle and subtle. It speaks to us through our intuition, the quiet knowing that we may experience as a feeling or a thought that seems to arise from nowhere but carries profound truth. The more we trust in this inner knowing, the more we strengthen our connection with that divine source. When we realize that we don't need to search outside of ourselves for God's voice, we can begin to look within with more faith and confidence. We can begin to trust our intuition, our gut feelings, and the deep sense of knowing that arises in certain situations. It becomes a matter of remembering that the voice of God is not a foreign presence, but something that is integral to who we are. It's not about searching in the world or in others for answers, but tuning into the stillness within, where the divine has always been waiting for us to listen. Your heart is a receiver, constantly picking up signals from the universe, from God, from your higher self. It is through the heart that we are able to tune into a deeper, more profound understanding of ourselves and the world around us. The heart, more than just a physical organ, acts as a gateway to higher consciousness, serving as the interface through which divine guidance can be received. When we learn to listen to the language of the heart, we connect with the source of wisdom and truth that transcends the mind. Just as a radio receiver tunes into specific frequencies, your heart tunes into the frequencies of the divine. These signals may appear as feelings, emotions, or intuitive insights that arise unexpectedly, offering clarity or direction in moments of uncertainty. The more we cultivate awareness of these signals, the clearer the messages become. The heart has an innate intelligence that often speaks more clearly than the mind, which is constantly bombarded with thoughts, doubts, and distractions. To access the divine through your heart, you must first learn to quiet the mind and listen to the subtle sensations and emotions that arise from within. When we experience peace, love, joy, or even a deep sense of knowing, it is often the heart communicating with us. These feelings are not random. They are divinely inspired nudges guiding us toward truth. As you grow in this awareness, you'll begin to recognize that your heart is always receiving divine signals. And by being present with those signals, you align yourself with a higher frequency of wisdom and guidance. The more you listen to your heart, the more attuned you become to God's voice. Practicing presence is one of the most powerful ways to align with the divine and hear God's voice clearly. In today's world, our minds are constantly distracted by past regrets, future anxieties, and the endless barrage of information that surrounds us. We often find ourselves lost in thought, disconnected from the present moment. Yet, true connection to the divine can only occur when we are fully present in the here and now. Presence means being aware of what is happening in the present moment, without judgment or distraction. It's about fully engaging with the world around you and within you, without letting your mind wander into the past or future. This state of presence is where God's voice can be heard clearly, because it is in this state that we are most attuned to the subtler realms of awareness. When we are present, we create an open channel for divine communication, free from the interference of mental noise or emotional turbulence. One way to practice presence is by paying attention to your breath, which anchors you in the moment. Another way is to bring your full awareness to whatever you are doing, whether it's walking, eating, or having a conversation. By focusing on the sensations, sounds, and feelings associated with the task at hand, you draw your attention back to the present moment, where the divine can be felt most strongly. As you cultivate this presence, you begin to notice that the divine guidance you seek is always available. It isn't something you need to chase or search for. It is already here in the present moment, waiting for you to notice it. The more you practice presence, the more you align yourself with a state of inner peace, allowing God's voice to flow through you clearly and effortlessly. Believing in your ability to hear God's voice is a crucial step in the process of connection. Many people struggle with doubt, second-guessing themselves, or feeling unworthy of divine communication. These feelings often stem from a lack of trust in oneself, in one's intuition, or in the ability to receive guidance from a higher source. However, hearing God's voice begins with the belief that you are capable of doing so. The moment you trust in your own inner wisdom, you open yourself up to a deeper connection with the divine. Belief is powerful because it shapes our reality. When you believe that God's voice is available to you, your entire perception shifts. You begin to recognize the subtle nudges, feelings, or thoughts that arise within you as divine communication, rather than dismissing them as random thoughts or mere coincidence. This shift in perception allows you to tune into a higher frequency of awareness, where God's voice can be heard more clearly and consistently. Doubt often stems from fear of being wrong, of making mistakes, or of not being worthy enough to receive divine guidance. These fears create a barrier between you and your connection with the divine. But when you let go of those fears and begin to trust yourself, you invite divine guidance into your life. The more you trust, the clearer the guidance becomes. Trusting yourself also means trusting your emotions and intuition. God's voice often speaks through these channels, offering you insight and clarity when you need it most. As you develop a deeper trust in your ability to hear and follow the divine, you become more confident in your decisions, knowing that you are being guided toward what is best for your highest good. That the divine voice is always one of love, truth, and knowing. It does not speak with judgment, criticism, or fear, as these are not its nature. Instead, God's voice comes with a sense of peace, clarity, and unwavering support. It speaks to us with compassion and understanding, guiding us toward what is true and aligned with our highest potential. This voice does not demand, but gently leads us to what we need, often offering us a deep sense of peace or relief when we listen. One of the key characteristics of divine guidance is that it resonates with love. When we receive a message from the divine, it feels expansive, uplifting, and encouraging. It doesn't instill fear or doubt, but provides clarity and confidence. In contrast to the often noisy and conflicting thoughts that come from the mind, the divine voice is quiet but firm in its message. It aligns us with truth, often bringing us back to a deeper understanding of our authentic self and our place in the world. The truth that the divine voice offers is not only a reflection of what is right in a universal sense, but it also resonates deeply with our own inner knowing. It affirms what we already intuitively know to be true, even if we may have doubted it at first. Divine guidance does not contradict the inner truth we carry within us. Instead, it amplifies it, helping us to remember our own wisdom. When you hear the voice of God, it always leaves you with a sense of deep knowing. a knowing that is rooted in love and truth. It is not a voice that overwhelms or forces, but one that nurtures and supports, helping you navigate life with more clarity and confidence. Hearing God's voice clearly is not a one-time event or a sudden experience. It is a lifelong practice of alignment and trust. The process of tuning into divine guidance is ongoing, requiring consistent attention, patience, and the willingness to remain open. Just as we don't expect to master any skill after one try, the same applies to hearing God's voice. It takes time to cultivate the awareness and the sensitivity needed to recognize divine communication in our lives. Each moment of presence, each moment of stillness builds upon the last, gradually allowing us to hear more clearly. The more we engage in practices that bring us into alignment, such as meditation, mindfulness, or simply being present in the moment, the easier it becomes to hear the subtle guidance that is always available. Alignment doesn't just mean tuning into the divine voice during meditation or quiet moments. It's about integrating that awareness into our daily lives. When we align our thoughts, emotions, and actions with the highest truth, we create the right conditions for divine guidance to flow freely through us. Trust is the foundation of this alignment. The more we trust that God's voice is always available and that we are capable of receiving it, the clearer the messages become. Doubt and fear can cloud our ability to hear, so letting go of these barriers allows us to connect with divine guidance more effectively. As we develop greater trust, the guidance we receive becomes more frequent and more precise, allowing us to move through life with greater confidence. This practice of alignment and trust is not something that happens once and then is forgotten. It is a continuous journey, one that deepens with time, experience, and an unwavering commitment to listening to the divine wisdom.